Hello again. Somebody requested a base tour, so that's what I'm going to do. It's not especially interesting. I mainly play this game working on projects and things rather than kind of building out excessive bases, but I'll show what I've got. So this area I'm standing in right now was just my starting area where I had all my initial machines and a solar panel and things to get started. My fabricator's still over here. That's my computer I use for programming IC chips. An atmospheric printer which I don't use, a furnace that I don't use, the biomaker which I do use occasionally. This is the mesh networking test setup, which you can see in the mesh networking video, and then just the initial kind of power bank in, some logic stuff that I use for testing. I generally use this area as a test bed before I move it elsewhere in the base, and a beacon just so I can find my way home because I'm good at getting lost. Power station, so obviously solar power. I know this isn't a particularly efficient layout, but it looks pretty. I wanted it to look like a nice big solar farm, which took a hell of a lot of cabling, as you can see, but it was kind of fun. We've got a coal generator here as emergency backup power, so if power drops too low on my batteries, then the coal generator just kicks in automatically, tops things up. 4 stationary batteries with 2 large transformers to output a maximum of 100 megawatts, which is what the cables can handle. Some IC here, which is controlling my solar tracking, the generator, and also my power monitoring. So we've got a console here which is fairly useless, showing me my percentage of charge, but the horizontal is so limited that it never really shows more than a tiny bit, but I've never bothered to change it. The main monitoring are these 3 LED screens here. So this one you'll see is the percentage of total charge, and then that will flick to the actual total charge at some point as well. There you go, so that's the total charge in megawatts that I've got, and that will just flick back and forwards, and it will change colour if that starts to get low, from yellow to red, so I get an obvious indication of when things are bad. This is the actual, well, it flicks between actual and total required, which normally are pretty much the same, but it flicks between those 2 numbers, and then this one is the current power production, so what's being put into the system. And again, this will go red if this becomes below the actual, so I can see when I've got a deficit. Obviously at night, that's nearly always a deficit, but there it is. Also got my battery charger stuck around the corner there. This is just trash, so this is where I just still have stuff lying around that I've never really used, so it just sits in a corner. A couple of lockers with just all the garbage that I've built and not used, or still have yet to use. Important one, the greenhouse. So airlock on a separate power network to the actual whole greenhouse systems. That's what I tend to do with all of my bases. I have a separate power network for the airlock, and then a separate one that controls the whole actual systems within. So let's go inside, and I will quickly speed up the video while this cycles. We are inside. Let's open the mask so you can see this is breathable atmosphere. Pretty simple setup in here. Heater, cooler, gas sensor, current readout of the pressure and the temperature in here, so I know that my plants are going to be okay. I've got a few plants growing food. I've actually turned hunger off. As soon as I had this up and running, I turned hunger off because it just got in the way of me being able to build stuff. So I pretty much just leave these here as a, I could be subsisting, but I can't be bothered. Inflow vent, outflow vent for the atmosphere cycling, and yeah, just vents for the airlock. So this could be obviously quite a big greenhouse with lots and lots of plants in it, but well, like I say, I've got it turned off anyway, but that would be more than enough, even if I had it turned on. Righto, let's close the mask up and speed this up as I cycle back out. Okie dokie. So over here, you can see in any of my other videos about automating ore production, or my factory video, you can see the proper tour of this area, which is my industrial complex. It's a mess. It used to be prettier, and then I added things on. I couldn't be bothered to keep it pretty, so now it's a mess. I could easily clear out some of these things, but I just can't be bothered. It works, so I'm just leaving it as it is. So yeah, if you want to see how all of this works, just go to one of my other videos that shows it, because that's far easier than me telling you all again. And then the final area, and you can see the pipes here leading to it, is the atmospherics room. So we'll quickly look around the outside first. So all of my gases, fuels, atmosphere are stored in this room. I'm pulling in gas from the atmosphere outside to process. Also from my furnaces, all gets fed in here. Orange is a fuel line. Brown is mixed atmosphere gas, kind of waste gas, as it were. Green is atmosphere, blue is water. So you can see that's atmosphere and water going into the greenhouse, and waste gas coming out. That gets fed back into the main line. And there's an in-out vent here that is controlled from the inside. So when no more filtering is going on and this pipe gets to a pressure where it's about to burst, this will just turn on and start outflowing. So I never really have to worry about the system. It'll just keep this brown pipe topped up with atmospheric gas, and then the filters use it as and when they need to. You can also see there's varying other pipes here. I think that's oxygen, volatiles, nitrogen is black, I think. Can't remember what the grey one is, which are moving around the outside for the filtering of gas. So let's have a look inside, and I can show you how that is working. Once again, while this cycles, we'll speed up the video. Once again, we are in breathable atmosphere here, and as you can see, this is the atmospherics room. So there's a separate tank for the storage of every single gas and mix. So O2, volatiles, nitrogen, CO2, fuel, breathable atmosphere, water, nitrous oxide, and pollutants. And you can see each of them has a pressure and a temperature gauge, so I can see how much of these I've got at any one time. Also, I've got loads of CO2. Limited nitrogen, because that's getting constantly mixed into atmosphere. Limited volatiles, because that gets constantly mixed into fuel. Oxygen is doing all right, because nitrogen is a limiting factor, but then I've got an outflow here that I can fill up my personal oxygen tank if I need to. And then atmospheric controls and climate control, so heaters and coolers. And it's all controlled by a whole bunch of IC up here. Again, you've got atmosphere inflow and waste outflow to keep the atmosphere in here cycling and breathable. So all of these ICs are controlling various things. They control the filters. So if one of these tanks was full, then the filter will turn off. So you can see that the CO2 tank is actually turned off. So it turns off when it gets up to about 50 MPa, and I think it turns back on again when it gets down to about 30. So that's why this is off at the moment. It went up to 50 and it hasn't yet dropped down to 30. Again, just stops everything exploding. The rest of them, I think you'll probably find, are still on. Yep, they are. There's also these logic chips, basic logic chips here, just to dump out where I'm doing a mix for my atmosphere. You get this this pipe in the middle, which can rocket up in pressure and explode. So you have to just have an outflow dump just to move that out when the mixing is going on. There's mixing here for the fuel again, and that is all controlled by the IC up here. So there's a fuel. That one, fuel control, concentrates on the mixing of the fuels, and I believe this one here, the atmosphere control, is for mixing my atmosphere. So whenever, what those controls do is that they actually make sure that the temperature stays fairly constant, or at least the temperatures of the inflowing gases. So if you've got very warm oxygen and very cold nitrogen, it actually affects the pressures of those gases. So if you mix them, they can actually come in the wrong ratios. So what this does is it basically waits until the gases that it's mixing are of comparable temperatures, so much so that they're not going to affect the mix at the other end, and then it will turn on the mixer. If the gases are really out of whack, then it just won't do any mixing until the temperatures come into line. Same on the fuel as well. So fuel won't mix unless the volatiles and what is it? Volatiles and oxygen are of comparable temperatures. So yeah, that is atmospherics. We've got the pressure of the room, temperature of the room over here. Temperature of the room is a little bit low because obviously our atmosphere temperature is fairly low because the oxygen temperature and the CO2 temperatures being brought in from outside are quite low. So it all gets mixed fairly low. So the heaters can't really keep up. But it's fine. It sort of stays around this temperature. So I could chuck some flares in here or something to warm it up, but it doesn't really matter. So yeah, that is atmospherics. So let's just cycle to outside. See you in a second. And that is the total base tour, really. Fullness of time, the intention is to sort of make a living area. I want to enclose all of this into some kind of workshop area, or at least the workshop part of it, so it's actually inside, but I haven't done that yet. Link all of this with tunnels, so there'd actually be a whole kind of breathable network of buildings with a main entrance somewhere. I haven't really worked it out yet. But like I say, I tend to get caught up in building projects like the IC controlled factory, which you can see a link for down below, and my automated ore production and stuff like that, and my mesh network. So they're the things that I tend to do in this game rather than building out a base. But yeah, that is my base. So if you've got any questions, anything you want to know about, let me know. The atmospheric stuff, all the code in there is probably fairly inefficient. It's something that I probably need to re-engineer at some point, but I haven't gotten around to it. Yeah, okay. Thanks for watching. Yeah, any questions, comment down below. See you later.